Live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. Your matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric. Live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Just Bernard Show, simulcasting on multiple platforms across the interwebs around the world. I'm so glad to be here today. As you can see, you are not seeing me. We are going to be doing a classic episode this afternoon. I woke up this morning. Well, actually, it started a few days back, maybe a week or so ago, and I noticed they were laying out pallets of roofing tile on my front lawn. Well, this morning about 7 or 8 o'clock, they started banging on the roof, and that's what they're doing right now. I'm surprised. Maybe they're on break right now. But anyway, I decided it wasn't worth it for me to get all camera ready and do a live show for you if we were going to have banging and sawing and hammering and all that during the construction. So I went back into the archives back 4 years ago. I can't believe that's when we did this show 4 years ago on astral projection and out of body experience, and we're going to start that in just a minute. But I just want to say hello to everybody before I start running the show. Welcome, Jen Rabbit over on YouTube. Hi, Mandy Hoffman. Good to see you all. Thank you for joining me here today. But so it's been I've had a great week. How's your week been going? Hi, Terry. Good to see you. I hope everybody's having a good week. I've had a really, really busy week the last week, and actually I'm kind of glad they had construction so I can just kind of relax and watch the show with y'all. Anyway, but I had some news. Maybe I'll remember by the end of the show. The show is going to be a little bit longer than usual. It's about a 48-minute show, I believe, maybe a little bit more than that. I know what I wanted to share with you. For those of you who did miss the Awakening Code class, the all-day spiritual retreat that we did a couple of weeks ago, I am going to be editing that over the next several weeks, and I'm hoping to have that up on the website available for you guys to purchase it as a course, probably by the beginning of October. I'll go into more detail about that as we get closer to it. And also, I wanted to just put it out there now, because in September I am going to be taking 2 weeks off. So there will not be a broadcast for 2 weeks. I believe it's the second and third week of September. And for those of you that might be my students at grade school, I will not be available from, I think, the 9th through the 19th. It's about a 10-day. I'm going to do a staycation. Even though it's not a real staycation, I'll be here for 6 days, and then I'm going to go fly up to Massachusetts to spend a few days with my family. And again, that'll be about the second week of September. Next week, we will do what I was planning to do today, and that is to do a live chat with everybody. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask me about spirituality, magic, consciousness, or anything about myself, think about that, and I'll be answering your questions live, face to chat, chat to face. Anyway, so without further ado, let me say hello to a few more people that jumped on here. Hi, Lars. Hello, Ricardo. Everybody on Facebook. Good seeing you. Let me tell you a little bit about today's show. Like I said, the show was recorded 4 years ago, back when I was still on Revolution Radio. Can't believe it's been over a year that I left Revolution Radio, and that the founder of the station passed a little bit shortly after I left the station. My goodness. But yeah, it's been over a year and a half about now. But so the the show was simulcast on Revolution Radio, as well as I believe it was simulcasting on Facebook, maybe not on YouTube at that time. But the gentleman who joined me is Graham Nicholls. He's still around, as a matter of fact. He is an English author, as well as a lecturer and advisory board member for the Ryan Research Center. He is a leading practitioner and researcher into out-of-body experiences and astral projection. So if you're interested in astral projection, you're really going to enjoy today's show. After reviewing it today, I do want to say that there were some video. Now I remember editing the show. There were some edits at the beginning because apparently we had lost the video feed. So you might see some images, some really cool like nature videos while he's talking. And then I think about 2 or 3 minutes in, then you get to see his face. I guess the stream fixed itself. But it's a really great interview with Graham Nicholls. So let's go ahead and get that started and enjoy. I'm sure you're going to learn quite a bit. And I'll be hanging around the chat and I'll be saying hi to y'all. So enjoy the show.
Hello, Graham. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you. Good to be on the show again.
Thanks for coming back. It's great to have you on again. Thank you. So what have you been up to this last year?
Oh, wow. Well, I've been working on lots of different research. I'm trying to move towards actually doing some scientific study to improve the data we have on out-of-body experiences and what they really are and things like that. I'm looking very closely at the visual side of the experiences and to try and understand what really might be going on. I think often there's a lot of assumptions or just ideas that have been around for a long time but haven't really been looked at closely or checked against what people actually experience when they have an OBE. So I'm trying to explore that in more depth.
Very good, very good. And I know that last year you recently put out the Navigator course. Can you tell us a little bit about the course and what people can expect if they were to take the Navigator course?
Well, there's actually 2 courses. There's the Navigator 5-week course, which is basically purely focused on the practical, because I found that some people weren't so interested in the theoretical side and the science and that side of things, and they just wanted to get into the raw practical approach and learn how to have the experiences for themselves. And then there's an 8-week version that's more for the people who are fascinated by the models of reality and consciousness and all the science that's out there. So in the 8-week version, I brought in my friend and author Anthony Peake, and he does the science and the theoretical side, and I do the practical side. So the 8-week version is kind of covers everything.
Oh, that's fantastic. And when you say 8 weeks, are they literally taking a class like every day for 8 weeks, or how does that go?
They're self-paced, so you could do them in, I guess, a week or something if you wanted to do it intensively. But it's designed so that you take a class and you have a week of practice. So you go towards the goal that was set at the end of the first class. So the idea is that you learn to have the experience over 8 weeks. That's how it's designed. But you could do it in any time frame that you like. The content is around over 15 hours of classes, so there's plenty of information on there for people.
That's fantastic. Wow. So, Graham, let's talk a little bit about astral projection and what it is and what brought you into exploring astral projection.
Well, I guess I was one of those people who, from a very young age, had unusual experiences, not just out-of-body experiences. It actually started with other kinds of experiences, apparitions, what appeared to be past life memories, images and glimpses of different locations and places and things like that I remember from a small child being in the playground of my school. I just remember having these images in my mind, and I didn't really know where they'd come from. And now looking back at it, they seem very in line with what people describe when they do research into children with past life memories. I recently met Erlander Haraldsson, the Icelandic researcher who worked with Ian Stevenson, the leading researcher into past life memories in children. And what he describes in his research is very much in line with the memories that I had as a child. So I guess I was unusual in the sense that I had these kinds of memories and kinds of experiences. And then when I was around 12, I had a few out-of-body experiences that didn't last very long. As with many people, their first experiences often only last a few seconds. And I was one of those people who had these very, very brief but very fascinating experiences. And 6 months later, I heard the term astral projection or out-of-body experience. I think it was out-of-body experience was the term that I heard. And then I basically dedicated myself. I think I said to myself that I would spend the next year and be dedicated to learning everything I could on this subject and trying to learn to explore it more for myself. And it took me 6 months, but I managed to have an experience intentionally after that, and then began to explore more in that field. So that was essentially how it started.
And how was your first experience? Was it something that was spontaneous, or were you actually intending to have an out-of-body experience?
Well, the very first ones were spontaneous, but they just happened, and I found they were quite unusual, because usually people's initial out-of-body experiences, they'll describe something like being above their body, maybe 6 feet above their body, looking down at themselves from above. That's a very typical first experience. But mine was actually not even in the room that I was located in physically. I found myself maybe half a mile away, just floating in the middle of the street. And one I remember was near the playground in the school that I went to. So I remember being just a few feet off the ground and quite a long way from my body. And I looked around, and it was intensely real and intensely vivid, and then it would just end very quickly. And I'd just been laying there or sitting there relaxed when that happened. I wasn't dreaming, I wasn't asleep, I wasn't unconscious. I was just laying relaxing or sitting relaxing, and these experiences happened. And I had no way to put that into a context as a 12-year-old. I had no religious background. My parents weren't interested in anything paranormal or anything like that. So I didn't really have any context to put it in until I heard this concept of the out-of-body experience. And that's when I really tried to learn to do it. And I had my first induced experience, intentionally induced. And that took 6 months before it happened. But when it happened, I felt this huge surge of energy go through my body. It was something akin to something like feeling a lightning bolt hitting you or something like that, but with no pain, nothing negative. But the intensity, the power of it was immense. It was like my entire being was kind of taken apart at a molecular level and then put back together again. It felt something like that. And I found myself above my body looking down, the more classic experience. And I had this glow of sort of energy coming off of my body, which seemed to light up the whole room. And I just looked at myself, and I could only rotate. I couldn't move in any other way, just sort of rotating very, very simply. Looked around the room, and I remember the kind of the light in the room, this sort of energy that was coming off me. And I had a definite sense of a body, but then it started to sort of weaken, I guess, the experience. And then I came back to my physical body. But that just completely blew me away and fascinated me. And I just really wanted to learn more and to explore more. And I think it opened the floodgates. That experience was like the starting point. And then I started to have more and more experiences, and I went stage by stage, very much baby steps at the beginning, just moving across the room, or it took me a long time even to get out of my bedroom. It was a very gradual process, but eventually I went further afield, and the experiences just flowered and opened up.
Wow, that's amazing. And let me ask you, when you started having the experiences, what did you use as a resource to kind of guide you as you started exploring astral projection?
Well, in those days there wasn't very much. I managed to find one book by an author called Janet Lee Mitchell, who was a parapsychologist. Is a parapsychologist. I think she's still doing research. But I read her book, and I found some interesting information on the science and a few techniques in the back, and that was really all I had until, I guess, around a year later, I met Douglas Baker, who was an esoteric lecturer in London, and I went to some of his lectures, and I think he saw a lot of potential in me, even at that age, and so he invited me to work for him, and I would work on the weekends setting up his lectures and selling books and things like that. So even as a child, it was kind of like my apprenticeship, really. He was like an early mentor, and he would teach me things. He would ask me questions on my development, ask me about my meditation practice, those kinds of things. So he was very encouraging at that age, and I kept in contact with him for a long time until he eventually died a few years ago.
Oh my goodness, wow. So you were lucky enough to actually have someone to guide you, to instruct you personally. That's great. And after you worked with him, what was the next step for you as far as mastering the ability to astral project? Was there any certain techniques or devices or anything that drew your attention?
I started to become interested in the science more and more, and technology and things like that could be used to enhance the experience. So I started to look into hypnosis. Sensory deprivation was a really big interest for a long. It still is, really. So I started looking at the work of John Zubek, who was a scientist who did 15 years of research into flotation tanks and all kinds of sensory deprivation, all different kinds of things. And I looked into his work in quite a lot of depth. His book is an amazing resource. It's very scientific, but it has lots and lots of information in there that can actually be used in a practical way. So I started to research that kind of area, and then I started to build structures. I went to an art school, and I used the resources and the technology that was available through the institution to build and design structures that I could then experiment with and see what kind of impacts different things would have. So, for example, the first one I built was a structure that had a central platform that would lift the person off the ground. And then an early form of my infraliminal sound, which is a sound technology I use and is available on my website, but that is designed to get to the vibrational state. So I would create these environments, if you like, these immersive environments that were designed to help induce an experience or create the perfect base level, if you like, the perfect foundation for people to have out-of-body experiences. And I then moved into virtual reality and things like that. Like you mentioned, the exhibition at the Science Museum was the largest project that I did, which was a massive 10-meter screen, surround sound, but all of that, it was just one person at a time would experience it. So it's a very powerful experience. If you imagine, it's almost like having a whole cinema that's interacting with you, that you go into one person at a time. That's a very unique opportunity for people and an experience. So that was something I really wanted to do, and that's what eventually got shown at the Science Museum.
Wow. And how was that received? I find the idea of virtual reality probably to be very helpful to open our mind and to, get us out of our body out of our mind, literally. How was that received? What was the response to that?
It was really well received, actually. The Telegraph newspaper placed it as a better project, as more significant and impressive than the Turner Prize that year. And if you're not aware, the Turner Prize is the largest art prize in the UK. So the newspapers were kind of saying this is better than the top art prize at the moment. So yeah, we got a lot of coverage and a lot of positive feedback, and interestingly, also a lot of people, especially women, found it very much a liberating thing, because within the virtual reality, we hadn't even really thought about this, but within the virtual reality, there was the possibility to go to, I guess, places that would be maybe dangerous or fearful for a lot of people in real life. But within the virtual reality, they could go there and be fearless and not have this sense of concern or anything like that. So a lot of people that were exploring the sort of virtual world that we created, which was based on my psychic understanding of London. So it was almost like I recreated the city, but recreated it from the perspective of a psychic understanding of it, or a whatever word you want to use, but this more energetic kind of understanding of it. So it gave people a direct experience of that in a virtual sense, and people found that very liberating and inspiring. So that was how it was received generally.
Wow, very nice. And I love the idea of using virtual reality for something like that. You spoke about people, fear in general. And one of the things that I hear a lot in my work, people ask me a lot of questions. I have in no way have mastered astral travel. Have I done it? Do I do it occasionally? Yes. But many people always seem to ask, they have this moment of either fear when they leave their body, or this like shock or surprise, and it pulls them back. Are there any tools that you could recommend for something like that?
I think usually I tend to focus on meditation, especially no mind meditations and things like that, because I go into quite a lot of detail in my course about Zazen, which is the form of meditation that I tend to favor, and I think is the most helpful with this kind of thing. But essentially, there's an element of having that ability to stay calm and consistent and, I guess, balanced within the experience, so that you don't have what you're describing is a kind of an emotional peak. Yeah. It can be a negative emotional peak like fear, or it can be a positive emotional peak like elation or excitement, but still it will kind of destabilize the experience to some degree. So I think the methodologies that I focus on are ways to avoid having this kind of an emotional instability when you go into that experience. So rehearsing it in your imagination, so that when you actually have the real experience, there's you've already rehearsed that idea of sort of being balanced and neutral. Changing your response to the experience. We tend to fear things, if fear is the issue, we tend to fear things that we're not familiar with, that we don't understand. So if we can become more familiar with the kind of territory and the kind of things that people describe, then that tends to help as well. So I think with most of my approaches, I tend to combine things, because I think the best approaches we can have is to look at it more holistically, and to try different things that will all lead towards a supporting structure. Could even be something like just making the place that you're having the experience from more comfortable and more positive for you, so that when you do have an out-of-body experience, you just feel more comfortable in the location that you're in, and things like that.
I love that idea of rehearsing, and I speak about that just in consciousness in general, of how it's a goal of mine through meditation and whatnot to stay in that centered place where we're not reactive. And what you're saying here is to kind of rehearse your reaction so you're not shocked out of the experience. And I love that approach. That's great. So for those of us that are watching or listening that really don't know much about astral projection, again, we hear so much about a near-death experience, out-of-body experience, a remote viewing. Is there a difference, and how could you describe to the layman what they are?
I think that the main difference with the things that you just described are almost degree. There's a difference of degree. I think that remote viewing is maybe at one end, and you're dealing with this sense of being aware at another location, but you're also aware of the location you're in. But also we need to divide remote viewing from clairvoyance, because I think they've become synonymous with each other, really. But I think they're not exactly the same, because I think remote viewing is a structured protocol. It's a way of using your psychic ability or using your clairvoyance in a structured way. So remote viewing is essentially following a planned system in order to enhance the accuracy of your clairvoyance. So I think what would be more correct to say is that something like clairvoyance is at one end. So clairvoyance meaning sort of traveling in your mind, so perceiving or psychically picking up impressions of another place within your mind, but you're still aware of where you are. Then if you move along the spectrum, you have maybe, I guess, the sort of semi-astral projection or semi-out-of-body experience type things that are, you don't feel like you're in your body maybe anymore, but you're still maybe not fully in another kind of location or another experience, or maybe your visual perception is not fully there, or maybe your sensory experiences are not fully there. So you're somewhere in between. You're kind of almost like shifting back and forwards. And then I would say there's a full out-of-body experience where your sense of self, your sort of autonomous sense of who you are is at another location altogether, and you're not aware of your original physical location. I mean, you might be aware of where it is, but not, you don't have any sensory connection anymore. It's like you've completely shifted somewhere else. And that to me is what I call an out-of-body experience. Then near-death experience, I think really a near-death experience is generally just an out-of-body experience that's been initiated by a cardiac arrest or by some kind of accident or something like that. So I think really an out-of-body experience is a part usually of a near-death experience, and the only real difference is the fact that there's a cardiac arrest or the person's in a critical state or something like that.
So it's almost like a crisis-induced altered state, basically.
You could say that, yeah. Whereas an OBE is usually from a healthy state, with no trauma or anything like that. But they're the same kind of essential experience, I think, right. For the most part.
Right. Let's talk about the astral world, for lack of a better term. Many of us that are involved in the paranormal or in metaphysics or in consciousness, we hear different planes of consciousness: the etheric plane, the astral plane, the mental plane, the spiritual plane. How does the word astral relate to these planes of consciousness, and are there different levels in your experience of out-of-body experience?
Well, there's certainly different levels, but as I was saying at the beginning, I think I'm cautious about going too much into the assumed ideas about what's out there. I think that there's so much fascinating information and reality and things out there that I think we shouldn't get bogged down in. Essentially, it's a kind of dogma to believe that it's just this plane and that plane, and we've kind of worked it all out. I don't think we're even close to working it all out. I think we have so much more to explore.
Graham, I hate to interrupt you, but we are coming up on a commercial break, and when we return, we'll be right back, continuing our discussion with Graham Nicholls. We'll be right back. How long does it take to learn how to do astral projection?
Oh, wow.
It's a trick question.
It is a difficult question, because I guess my reply to that would be something like, how long does it take someone to get fit and healthy, or how long does it take to learn to play a musical instrument? Or I think you get where I'm going.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, it depends a lot on the individual. I think that most people will get some kind of experience maybe within a kind of 8-week period. That's why I structured my course in that way, because I think if someone practices consistently, and that's one of the factors as well, because often people talk about a time scale, but it also depends how long how consistently you practice. But most people will get something within about 2 months, but in my case it took me 6 months to induce the experience. So it's a really difficult question to be sort of precise about, but the good news is it seems to be getting shorter as we have more understanding and more science, and we're starting to understand what causes the experience far more accurately. So it's much more efficient to learn now.
Right. And actually, that leads me to the next question. What is it that causes the experience? Is it physiological? Is it purely consciousness? We've heard hypotheses about it being, the DMT and the pineal gland. So, have we done enough research to kind of explain it?
No, I don't think so. Not yet. We know that certain things that create some form of shutdown of awareness of the body are key. So if you think about the things that are classically described as inducing an OBE, it might be deep relaxation, it might be, as we talked about just now with the near-death experience, it might be a cardiac arrest or being unconscious, or it might be, as in the shamanic cultures, often used physical exhaustion, things like that. Anything that will reduce the awareness of the body to some degree, because you go into this shift, this sort of altered state where your inner awareness or your mental awareness becomes dominant over the physical, because usually it's sort of the other way around. If you can make that shift so the balance goes more towards the internal, then the experience can take place. So obviously there's more to it than that, but I think that's the kind of core of what is apparent in all the different forms of induction of the experience.
Right. And someone else is asking if they do astral projection and they're trying it for the first time, what can they expect to feel in their physical body? What happens to the physical body during an experience?
Well, the initial stages, there's usually some kind of what I call the sort of transitional stages. Now, most people have heard of the vibrational state. It's a common sensation that feels like a vibration. Something from a weak sort of electrical current is the base level of it, but it can go right through to what I described with this intense electrical, almost molecular kind of feeling, very, very sort of intense, like a lightning bolt kind of level. So there's a real spectrum of how even the vibrational state can unfold. But then there's other forms as well, like a void state is quite commonly described, which is essentially like being in a kind of womb-like state where you're conscious, but only just. There's no visual dimension, there's no really complex thought. It's just like being in some kind of really deep meditational state, and that can often then from that lead to an out-of-body experience. Some people describe it as the first stage of their out-of-body experience, but in most cases that I've worked with, it happens prior to the out-of-body experience. And then there's others like buzzing noises and things like this. But the way to look at it, I think, from my research, is that they are all signs of the transition taking place from in-body awareness, so that sense that you're physical and that you're looking out at the world through your eyes, that kind of idea. But as you start to shift away from that, you go into this sort of intermediate phase where there's a kind of almost like moving back and forwards, almost like a vibration from one awareness to the other. It's almost like a shifting is going on. And if you think about it, buzzing and things like that are also kind of vibrational in essence. So there's a sort of process that goes on as you start to go out of body. So that's kind of, in a physical sense, what it tends to be like. The actual going out of body, the exit part, can happen in many, many different ways.
So it's fair to say it wouldn't be the same exact experience for every single person.
No.
We were talking about dogma before, and a lot of people get stuck in the idea of, oh, I don't see a light, I'm not doing it, or I'm not vibrating, I'm not doing it, and we kind of get stuck in that idea. So you're saying
yeah,
that,
it's not true. Yeah.
There's generalizations, but there's no one particular experience that the body has.
Well, it's interesting because if we do go to the science, and when I say science, I'm not talking about just another dogma. What I'm talking about is when essentially hundreds, thousands of people are asked, what was your experience like? Did you have a sense of a body? Did you not? Did you have a silver cord? Did you not? Those kinds of things. Basically, just someone, instead of making assumptions, just asking hundreds, thousands of people, what did you actually experience? When that happens, when people take the time to do that, we find that in reality, a lot of the things that are generally believed don't hold up. For example, an experience of a body, so like a kind of astral body or energy body, is only apparent in about 40% of cases. So that means that 60%, the majority of people having out-of-body experiences, don't experience a body. So that's interesting, I think, from the start. Then things like the silver cord, only about, well, in my research, it was something like 0. In the last research, it was also 0. But then in research before that, it was about 2%. And then in, I think, a study before that, it was around 4 or 5%, something like that. So it's a very, very low level of occurrence. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I'm saying that people only experience it in a very small proportion of cases.
Right.
So the majority of people don't experience it. So when we start to kind of get into what people really experience, it's surprising, really, and I think fascinating, because when you start to realize that people are experiencing 360 vision and being a ball of energy and light, and this is actually more common than being like a normal physical type body, but out of their body. I think that's far more fascinating, to think that we enter into this completely different form when we have these experiences. And I think it's a real shame that often gets overlooked.
Yeah, I agree. I can't say that I've ever experienced it. There's several successful experiences I've had. I've never really experienced a physical body or saw a body, or, a lot of people say, oh, well, look at your hand when you leave. And it's like, well, I don't have a hand when I leave.
Exactly. Yeah. That's true for many people.
There's, right now it's become very popular, and I don't know, well, actually, this is my question. It's become very popular for people to do shamanic tourism. A lot of people are going down to South America to experience shamanic vision quests with ayahuasca and whatnot. Is there any relation to it? Are they going into the astral plane, or is it more inward? What are your ideas on that? That's difficult. I think with a lot of the states that people go into, I think there are so many different layers and levels to experience that I think the best option is to be very detailed and specific about what someone actually experienced. I've never taken any kind of hallucinogen or anything like that, so I haven't got direct experience of that. But from what I've read and studied on the topic and talking to people who have, my impression is that
For example, there's often plant spirits associated with a particular plant. There's often very specific ways that the experience will unfold. So I think for the integrity of that experience and the integrity of all the different kinds of experiences, we should be very detailed and specific about, studying it and looking at it. I think we have a tendency as human beings to say, oh, well, it's kind of similar. Like you mentioned with the DMT thing earlier, it's kind of similar to a near-death experience. So let's say it's the same thing. And I don't think that really helps anyone, because, if it's only similar, I mean, well, if you think about it, really, all conscious states are similar to some degree. They're all some form of consciousness. We have, you could say that, in my dreams, I'm walking around often in a familiar location. Does that mean it's the same as when I'm awake? Because there's similar elements doesn't mean it's the same thing. So I think we have to be really careful about that and to be, honest about the details and all of that kind of thing. And when it comes to the shamanic side of things, I guess I've always felt that have some kind of relationship with the person that you're trusting and that you're experiencing. I mean, if we're talking about going into a very sort of intimate experience in a sense, then I think that needs to have that engagement and that responsibility from the shaman as well, that that person will take responsibility for the people that he's working with. And unfortunately, I think in the more tourist side of things, I see a lot of, not taking responsibility for the process that these people are going through, and also from the tourists as well. The tourists kind of seeing it like a, in quite a superficial way, and not really respecting the culture and the heritage that they're walking into. So I think on both sides, as long as there's this kind of genuine engagement going on, I think that's what's necessary to really make it a real and important experience. That would be my take on it.
I appreciate that, and I agree with you. You brought up dreams, and that's a great question in reference to when we're dreaming. Can we be having an out-of-body experience, or can sleep induce an out-of-body or astral experience, and are they similar? How do dreams and the dream world layer into all of this?
I think that dreams are another conscious state. They're another, especially a lucid dream, when you do have sort of conscious awareness. So whenever we have conscious awareness, we can make certain choices. We could choose to meditate within a dream. I've done that personally. It's a very interesting experience. We can choose to induce an out-of-body experience. I've also done that. But I think that, like with most things with dreams, our consciousness is not fully alert. I think most people would agree with me on that. When I've spoken to lucid dream teachers and experts, Robert Wagner, for example, they've described that, yes, you can have this very, very vivid, crystalline, pure awareness, but you're also slightly not fully in your normal awareness. So when you do make an action, it's always maybe a little bit hazy or a little bit not quite what it would be when you're conscious. So I think that if you choose to induce an OBE from a dream state, which I do explore in my courses and in my book, the second book, Navigating the Out-of-Body Experience, I do include that methodology because it's a valid way of exploring it. But I think that it tends to be more blurry and it more dreamlike, essentially. But if you induce the experience from a conscious state, then it tends to be more aligned to a conscious state. So I think the way I tend to look at it now is that the state that you start in, the conscious state that you begin the process in, will have an effect on the experience itself that you have. So if you're fully alert when you begin, you'll be fully alert in the experience. If you're not quite fully alert, then I think that would probably be how I would describe it now.
Oh, I see. And speaking of consciousness, Is there the ability to have dual consciousness where you're conscious on this plane as well as during your astral experience?
Do you mean conscious in the physical body and also
Yes.
out of body? So,
yeah. Can you be conscious in both levels, on both sides?
Well, you can, but I think I would probably call that a semi out of body experience, because it would be. I think there's a reduction in the depth of the experience if you do that, because obviously you can't go fully immersed in the externalized experience if you're still partially aware of what's going on with your body. So to have the full multi-layered, multi-leveled out-of-body experience, then I think it's often it's necessary to go into the full experience rather than remaining in this kind of in-between liminal kind of state.
I see, yes. And of course, a lot of people who are fearful of this type of work, or the paranormal or spirituality or astral projection, we always hear, the warnings of, if you leave your body, another spirit can come in and possess you. What are your thoughts on the idea of being possessed while you're out of body?
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think that if that's within your sort of belief system, then I don't really see why going out of body is going to make it any more likely than being in body, because essentially I don't think that we're like a kind of Russian doll where we're just popping out and leaving our body empty. I don't think it works like that. I think it's more like a kind of changing frequency or something like that. And I mean, I've never seen any sort of evidence for that. And the thing is, the only people I've ever sort of come across that seem to talk in the terms of possession and things like that tend to be people who are very, very much in that belief system and often a member of a particular religion or whatever. And I find it interesting that the people who don't believe in that kind of thing never seem to experience it.
Yeah.
Not having said that, I've never met anyone who has claimed what you just said, who's claimed that they had an out-of-body experience and then something took over their body. I've never met a single person, hand on heart, ever, who says that. In the hundreds of thousands of people I've spoken to, I've never heard of anything like that. I've heard of people seeing shadow figures and things like that when they're out of body, but they've never actually done anything to the person. Right. So or they've had maybe some kind of fearful experience. But the important thing to say with fearful experiences is they tend to be related to sleep paralysis. So like I was saying just now about how if you have an experience from a sort of dreamy state, it seems to affect the out-of-body experience. I think it's kind of true with sleep paralysis, because most of the time people have fearful experiences when they have sleep paralysis. Mm. So if you have an out-of-body experience from sleep paralysis, which some people do, I'm not one of them. I've never done it from sleep paralysis. I've never had sleep paralysis. But someone who does do it in that way, sometimes they'll see a figure or something like that. But that's a characteristic factor of sleep paralysis. So I think it's more that the sleep paralysis is affecting their experience rather than that's an objective reality. I don't think there is any objective reality to this sort of harmful claims, any more than meditation is harmful or any of those other practices we can do.
So astral projection, OBE, all of these techniques that we're describing here, why would someone want to try them? What are the benefits of astral projection and out-of-body experiences?
Well, I think that they're the most direct experience of the larger reality of our spirit, if you want to call it that, or soul, or the essence of ourself, our pure consciousness, whatever term you want to refer to it from. I think that all other practices are kind of skirting around it to some degree, whereas the out-of-body experience allows you to be fully within that, to experience the sensory, multi-leveled kind of other reality directly, rather than kind of read about it, or rather than kind of wait until you die or
Right.
something like that. This is a way of exploring the nature of who you are directly now, and I think it has an effect on your being. It's caused a kind of sense of calm and a sense of interconnectedness within me, a sense of growth and compassion. Why I became vegan, for example, because I no longer wanted to harm other living beings. All sorts of things have changed in my life as a result of the kind of beauty and the spiritual connection that these experiences can evoke.
I love that. It brings to mind a quote from Joseph Campbell when asked by a priest if he had faith. He says, "No, I don't have faith." He's like, the priest says, "What do you mean you don't have faith?" He goes, "I don't need faith. I have experience." So he's experienced it, just like what you're talking about. And I can relate to that wholeheartedly. So, Graham, we're running out of time. I can't believe it. This has gone by very quickly. Tell us, let's remind everybody a little bit about the Navigator course and where they can find it.
Well, if they go to my website, grahamnicholls.com, there's actually a 50% discount at the moment. It was supposed to end yesterday, but I realized we were doing this interview, so I've extended it for a couple of days so that if people wanted to get the course for half price, it's there. But there's the, as I mentioned, the 5-week one, which is the sort of intensive, learn the practical side of things in over 5 weeks, but you can do it quicker if you want to. And then there's the 8 class version or 8-week version, which also includes Anthony Peake, who has written many books on consciousness and has a similar ethos. So.
Well, we are out of time. I can't believe it. Well, thank you again, Graham. And again, everyone, that's at grahamnicholls.com. And have a wonderful week. We love you. And I'll see you next Tuesday, everyone. Bye-bye.
And yes, that was the classic The Just Bernard Show with Graham Nicholls. That was 4 years ago. Don't go looking for the discount on his course, because I doubt it's still there. But anyway, so yeah, I love seeing some of these old shows, and kind of like it's almost like learning something new again. I love when I have a guest like that has so much knowledge and so much information about a particular subject matter. But yeah, so that was great. I hope you all enjoyed it. I know I certainly did. Next week I will be live with you, face to chat, as I like to say. I'll be taking your questions live, so you're going to interview me again. I like to do this about once a month. With that being said, please let me remind everybody that you can now become my supporter on my Facebook page. If you go to facebook.com/Bernard Alex Alvarez, not my personal profile, but my quote-unquote fan page. I need a better word for that. But I don't like that word, fan page. My page. Click on that blue button and please become a supporter, become a subscriber. It helps me to produce these shows. And not only that, I'm getting lots of ideas. I was talking about the chat we're going to do next week. But we're going to start doing like a just for my supporters, my Facebook supporters. We're going to do like a, I don't know if you want to call it a support group or whatnot, but just it'll be a private discussion where we all can just like chat, and I'd be happy to help with personal issues or anything that you need to focus on. Anyway, there's more stuff there. There's a free course on there already. Everyone will be getting a free copy of my book pretty soon, and I've got all kinds of things lined up for the I'm calling them my super supporters. So yes, please go to my Facebook page, not my profile. Click on that, become a supporter, and you're going to get all kinds of little treats and stuff coming up real soon. Again, I haven't even rolled it out formally. This is kind of the soft rollout. But yeah, so I will see you all next week. I want to thank you all for joining me. Of course, if you do want a one-on-one session with me, you're welcome to go to bernardalvarez.com, click on bookings, and I'm happy to work with you one-on-one as well. my calendar of events is so full. I don't know what to talk about without boring you. So I'll talk more about it next week. I am so glad to be able to spend this time with you, everyone. You all have a wonderful, wonderful week. I love you very much. And I will see you all very, very soon. Have a great week ahead. Bye-bye now.
Live from the heart of the Blue Ridge.